Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to review both PFL and the UFC. We had PFL Super Fights this Saturday. We also had UFC Vegas 99 this Saturday, and I'm not going to speak super highly on either card for the PFL. I think it was honestly a bit of a failure because yes, you had Francis Ngannou on the card. Yes, that is a big deal. And Renan Ferrar is the best you can do for an opponent, but I thought that the rest of the card was really unimpressive. Like, even on a name value level, you had the co-main event of the women's featherweight title of the world, basically Chris Cyborg versus Larissa Pacheco. You had Johnny Eblen on the card, but fighting against the guy he was having a rematch with, of a fight that no one really needed a rematch of. A couple of, interesting names, prospects elsewhere. You had Ibrahimov. I'm really bad with that name. I'm sorry. You had another Dagestani or Chechen. I think he's Chechen fighter. Hussein Kadamagomayev on the card as well, who ended up losing. So you had those two prospects, and then you also had the Paul Hughes versus AJ McKee fight, which was a good fight. And then you were Javier Stotts, who's a good fighter, but fighting Marcos Breno, who is not really a kind of guy you're really putting into that kind of role. So that was basically the card. Is you had, yes, a Battle of the Titans that you were not doing a very good job of hyping up. You had the huge Battle of the Titans fight, but at the same time, you had nothing really below it. And the Battle of the Titans fight was going to be a relatively short one and ended up being 3 minutes and 32 seconds. And like it or not, Renan Ferreira is probably the best you can do for Francis Ngannou in the PFL in terms of an opponent, someone who's big, threatening, and so on. He's not very good. And, I say that with the full knowledge that, men's MMA heavyweight is not very good in general, and that's why. So I would have stacked this card. I would have been like, all right, we're going to capture the Francis Ngannou hype train, and we're gonna bring everything. You're going to see the best PFL card you've ever seen. And they elected to really give it a really good co-main event, and that was about it. And then Paul Hughes versus AJ McKee, and that was about it. And then over in the UFC side of things, obviously it's an Apex card. It is what it is. A main event that was a bit of a weird fight, honestly. Like, you're always hoping that Michelle Pajeda does something really cool, but if it doesn't, it was going to be like it ended up being. So there you go. And then other than that, you had Rob Font versus Kyler Phillips. That's a good fight. Ended up being pretty entertaining. But then below that, it's like Charles Johnson, Sumudarji. Weird fight. Cameron Smotherman, Jake Hadley. Why was this on the main card? Darren Elkins, Daniel Pineda. Hey, I'm always down for a damage fight, but still. Asu Almabayev versus Mathaus Nicolau, which is about the boringest flyweight fight you're going to find. Jan Matsumoto, Brad Katona. That was good. That was dope. Jocelyn Edwards versus Tamiris Vidal was surprisingly good as well. Elise Reed, Jessica Penne. It was fine. Melissa Martinez, Elise Ardeline. It was fine. And then Austin Lane versus Robelis de Spain, which if it got out of the first round was going to be kind of crap. And it got out of the first round. So let's talk about the PFL fights. First up, really quick. I don't have much to say about the Francis Ngannou fight. He took Fahad down relatively early and got to a dominant position. The rear ride and just starting to pound away at the gigantic man. There was a cool triangle attempt by Fahad, but I don't think it was all that close. And at the end of the day, commentary was really hyped about that, but obviously just got pounded out. It's a big deal for Francis. I really do hope that the whole Francis Ngannou thing works out for the PFL, because I want this to be a step forward towards star free agency and so on, where fighters get their fair pay and it brings UFC pay up and it gives life to the PFL and other promotions. I can't say that I'm terribly bullish on it though. Anyways, co-main event was Larissa Pacheco versus Chris Cyborg. I had Cyborg winning the first 2 rounds and the 4th and the 5th round. I had Pacheco winning the 3rd round. Essentially, at the end of the day, Pacheco just didn't really have an answer for the big moments of Cyborg. Cyborg would just be able to hurt her in a way that Pacheco was unable to hurt Cyborg back at any point. Although she did bloody Cyborg up very, very badly. The face was a mess. I think my tweets during this were largely I know Cyborg looks like she's losing because you get the camera shot of her face and it's swollen eyes. the cut, the blood, etc. But she's really not. And that was kind of the thing, is that Pacheco was unable to really set a volume pace on her and was also unable to really hurt her. So you would have Cyborg just landing far too hard shots for Pacheco to respond to, and also like being able to take her down kind of at will, that was particularly surprising because, of course, we saw Pacheco stop a lot of Kayla Harrison's takedowns, and maybe we just need to appreciate just how good Cyborg actually is. I know there's the whole steroids thing, and there's a whole bunch of stuff for her team, as far as I understand it, through running her Twitter, have done her no favors throughout the entirety of her career. It's not worked out, but as a fighter, I guess the fact that she lost to Amanda Nunes in the UFC kind of is always, I don't know, maybe made me think a little bit lesser of her than I probably should. And I picked Pacheco and was obviously quite wrong. Johnny Eblen versus Fabian Edwards it took basically till the 5th round for Edwards to figure out what to do. I also did score the 3rd round for him, but like realistically, he was trying to utilize the fatal flaw that is his and his brother Leon Edwards' like thing, where they're kind of looking for like this perfect like sniper shot sort of deal. And guys, you're big, strong dudes who actually can weaponize a clinch. Like, go forward, like take the initiative, do something. And in the 5th round, he kind of did that. He started making it a bit of a brawl, and whether it was Eblen not having the gas to go in the 5th round anymore, or the fact that Eblen is just not very good off the back foot if you just kind of force him there, I don't know. But at the end of the day, had Edwards done that from the hop, I think this would have been a way more interesting fight. Even if, I don't know if he would have won. I mean, he might have gotten finished, but like, yeah, it was kind of the problem with this rematch just in general. Is I was like, Edwards is just going to become like a more back foot counter hunting kind of guy, and Eblen's just going to break him down, and he did that for 4 rounds. Kadamagomayev versus Zafar Musin. Musin is huge, I'll just say that, and I think that was really just the highlights of the fight. Musin was so large that Hussein could not in any way, shape, or form control him, and ended up winning, I thought, all 3 rounds pretty easily. AJ McKee versus Paul Hughes was pretty good. I scored all 3 rounds for Hughes. Somehow this ended up being a split decision, and I don't get it. I can see giving McKee a round, but I can't see giving him the fight. I don't know if it was like that AJ McKee just looked kind of bad out there today. I think we're going to talk about this a little bit with Rafael Stotts as well, where maybe it's just like the jet lag factor of, bringing American trained fighters out to the Middle East and having, less than ideal circumstances for the fight leads to like, not great performances. But McKee did look like very, very flat. There wasn't an explosiveness to him that you're used to seeing. There wasn't a dynamicism. Paul Hughes was able to kind of just honestly bully him a little bit. Like he would, get close enough to allow for a clinch very, very easily, but then just clearly hit him very hard and land hard knees and do damage to AJ McKee in a way that McKee didn't really have any real response for, which was kind of weird because like Hughes was giving him, it was the one complaint I had about Hughes, is that his way of doing this was giving away like clinch time to McKee, but McKee would get the clinch, pin him to the fence, and just not be able to really do anything with it. So yeah, a great performance by Paul Hughes. He called that Usman Nurmagomedov, which I mean is a fight that you could definitely make. I will say this: I'm never gonna be terribly high on like someone going, I'm a superstar. It's like if you're a superstar, it's self-evident. It just happens. Like I don't know, I don't know. It just feels like a waste of time. If people aren't treating you like a superstar, you saying you're a superstar isn't going to really do that. And then I don't really have much else to talk about on this card. Rafael Stotts versus Marcus Moreno ended up with Stotts getting a rear naked choke. It was a really smooth back take by him and a great transition. But like prior to that, just kind of looked flat. I had it 1 round apiece going into the 3rd. But yeah, that's about it. And then further down, there's just not much to talk about here. We had 2 Dagestani or Chechen fighters, I'm not sure which, in Makasharip Zainukov and Ibrahim, as I said, doing their thing and just kind of out wrestling their opponents and putting them on the ground, doing their thing, and a triangle choke victory for the closest thing we had to a local fighter, although he's from Morocco, I do believe. I'm not great with Middle Eastern and African flags. Yeah, Morocco. In Taha Bendenote, who beat Canadian Tariq Ismail by triangle choke. So that was about it for the card. Like I said, they really should have stacked it more. There's no cancel fights that would have been a bigger deal. I don't know. I mean, I get it. I get it. Ngannou is owed a lot of money for this fight card. His opponent is owed a lot of money for his fight card. But I think if you're going to actually make a difference in the PFL market, in the MMA market, PFL, you needed to stack this card, and you didn't. You gave us a good co-main event. I appreciate that. Cyborg versus Pacheco, best featherweights in the world for the women. But that was kind of about it. Otherwise, we had, like I said, a rematch that nobody really cared for, and Paul Hughes versus AJ McKee was pretty good. But that's about it. That's about it. Anyways, moving on to the UFC fight card, Vegas 99, headlined by Michel Pereira versus Anthony Hernandez. I don't have much to say about this. Early in the fight, Pereira was doing some stuff, like landing some good shots and so on, but it got shut down pretty quickly. Repetitively in my notes, there's the following stuff where I'm like, I'll note one thing that Pereira is doing, and we return to our regularly scheduled mauling. And that was what it was. Fluffy Hernandez walked him down over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, getting the takedowns and just beating him up. I gave 2 10-8 rounds in both the third and the fourth round, frankly, and I think the second round even could be. But I thought Pereira landed some stuff at the start and at least had the guillotine, threat and so on that I think kept it from being a 10-8 round. But yeah, some people are talking about this as a fraud check for Michel Pereira. I kind of disagree because I think it was just, we already knew. It's kind of the thing is that a lot of MMA fight fans, and I'll use Paddy Pimblett as an example for this, where there are Paddy Pimblett fans who aren't just hey, I find Paddy fun and his personality's infectious or whatever. No, he's going to be a champion. I don't think Michel Pereira ever had that. I think the closest thing Michel Pereira had was people saying he has the athletic ability of a champion, and if he had actually put together a game, he would be a championship contender. But everybody kind of was in on the secret that he wasn't. So that was an interesting conversation to have on Twitter that's going on about whether this is a fraud check or not. But yeah, congratulations, Fluffy Hernandez. You got the big win. I've got you against Nasruddin Imavov or Kyle Bahayo in your next fight. And for Pereira, I've got the winner of Shara Bullet versus Armin Petrosian. In the co-main event, Rob Font versus Kyler Phillips was largely Kyler Phillips holding him down in the first round. Had something like 4 minutes of control time or whatever. And Font got up at the end and actually, did some decent work in the last 40 seconds, but way too late. And then in the second and the third round, it was just kind of the same, except that when Font got taken down, he got up. And otherwise, he just kept outstriking Kyler Phillips quite handily, outlanding him 31-14 and 23-14, respectively, in the second and third round in significant strikes and doing his thing. It looked like kind of a return of the old Rob Font, but it also looked like kind of what I was talking about with Kyler Phillips a lot of the time, is that a lot of this time it was just very, very frustrating to be a guy who picked Kyler Phillips and watching him go out there, and I'm just you just need to pressure Font. You just need to get on the front foot. You just need to press some wrestling openings, because Font was very willing to clinch repetitively with Kyler Phillips, and his corner was telling him not to, and he just couldn't avoid it. And it's but Phillips would do nothing with it. It was very, very frustrating, and it's disappointing because Kyler Phillips is with the MMA Lab, and it's a gym I have a tremendous amount of respect for that can turn someone with the athletic gifts of Phillips into something very, very good. And I'm not sure it's happening. Or maybe Rob Font just has that in him. Anyways, Font, I've got against the winner of Marcus McGee versus Jonathan Martinez. I've got Phillips against Chris Gutierrez, because if Chris Gutierrez can't encourage you to come forward and realize that sitting back and being super non-structured like Kyler Phillips did in this fight isn't a way to win, I don't know what will. Sumo Jarji versus Charles Johnson. This was fun. Johnson put up a way faster pace than you would think in the early going here. I scored the first and the second round for him. I know the first round was really, really, really close, and it was basically Johnson kind of constantly pushing into the clinch against Sumo Darji, and Mudarji winning at range, apparently outlanding him 24-19 significant strikes, but getting outlanded by total strikes 33-24. I gave that to him. And then in the second round, we had the interesting thing of Johnson getting really, really frustrated with it, obviously. Like, he's used to having the reach and the range to make somebody fight him at his game. And Sumudarji being actually like a longer fighter was clearly, I think, a bit of a problem for him. And also, a fighter who likes to fight off the back foot with his boxing and so on. And he's starting to piece up Johnson a little bit. But then Johnson finally catches him along the cage, and just starts unloading, hits him with a barrage of punches. Ref could have honestly stopped this because he dropped him and was pounding him on the ground. But he let him continue. Sumudarji does recover, lands a hard up kick, uses an armbar triangle to get a scramble and actually get to a dominant position. At the end of the day, Johnson manages to get up from that, obviously, though. Last 20 seconds is like a little bit crazy in terms of like scrambles, but at the end of the day, that's a Johnson round easily. And then the third round was easily Sumudarji's because he started to utilize a lot more kicks to try to keep the range, and kind of had like better counter work, which hadn't really been there in the first 2 rounds. He even would catch Johnson's leg kicks and kind of try to dump him. But he just outpaced him. Now, I will say Mudarji did make a huge mistake in the third round. He goes for a takedown, and like Johnson ends up on top of him. But the scramble manages to keep that from being like kind of anything. And then Johnson ends up shooting into a Darce choke position with Sumudarji, who uses it to land knees. Pretty cool, actually, application of the Darce choke position. Anyways, Johnson got the decision. I've got him against Steve Urseg. I've got Sumudarji against Edgar Shires. I think Sumudarji's actually stock goes up here in a loss. I honestly thought he was kind of going to get just worked in this fight. And the fact that he won the third round and was on his way to winning the second round until, getting dropped suggests some good things for him in the future that I didn't really expect. Not going to say much about Jake Hadley versus Cameron Smotherman. It was a terrible performance from Hadley. He even got a point deducted for getting deep into Smotherman's Smotherman's eye. And also I have a line here in the early second round, Hadley with his biggest strike of the fight, a kick to the balls. And it was kind of foul heavy for Hadley and just not a good performance at all. I will say Smotherman was better than I thought he was going to be, but like I really think this was more about just Hadley just not being good, just being pretty bad. Smotherman is defensively quite void. I don't know. It's hard. It's going to come off as sour grapes because of course I picked Hadley to win the fight, and then I'm here shitting on Smotherman on his performance here to justify Smotherman winning, but I don't know. I'm probably going to pick against Smotherman when he fights next. I still think he's quite bad. And Hadley, this is just probably the end of the line for him. He's getting Contender Series fodder, if nothing else, because he just lost to a guy who lost a Contender Series. That's kind of it. It's a shame because I do think there is something in Hadley, but this is just a really bad performance in a fight that probably was his contract fight, because if I'm not mistaken, at one point the UFC was giving out standard 4-fight contracts to people that they had signed, and I want to say this was his 4th fight. No, okay, he's been around a little longer. Let's see here. Let's try and figure this out here. So lost to Alan Nascimento, that's fine. Beat Carlos Candelario, Malcolm Gordon. Lost to Cody Durden, that's fine. Lost to Charles Johnson, that's fine. Beat Colin Logard. So that's like 1, 2, 3 wins, 3 losses. So he's 3-4. He's probably got a fight left, but like you lose to a guy who lost a Contender Series. This is it's a rough time to really matchmake you against anything but somebody coming off Contender Series. And for Smotherman, I've got Tony Gravely, who's a guy who could use a win, and I think we'd get it pretty easily there. So yeah, I'm bucking Smotherman to lose, but again, I think he might be one of the worst bantamweight in the UFC. Darren Elkins versus Daniel Pineda. This was bloody, violent. I did score it for Pineda, honestly. I scored the first and the third round for him. He threatened a lot of guillotine chokes that I think were... In the first round, he was able to get on top. I think, like, after in the second and third round, I think it became a bad idea because it would put him on bottom. But, like, in the third round, he was getting his... Elkins was getting his leg, like, collapsed by hard punches. Not hard punches. Hard kicks to the leg. There you go. My apologies. And was largely failing on a lot of takedowns. He went something like over 6 in the third round. So there you go. And only ended up with top control time because of, Pineda being dumb. I guess it's effectively a good thing that Elkins ended up winning because at the end of the day, Pineda retired at the end of the fight, and Elkins is continuing on. So, like, a win for Pineda would have been just a moral thing as opposed to a contract thing, and a contract thing or a career thing or anything like that. So, he gets to go out there and have a fight that I think he was very, very proud of, and ride off into the sunset with, like, a pretty solid, probably perfect retirement fight for Daniel Pineda. So I'm not gonna harsh on the buzz too much. Elkins, he is Elkins. I don't think, if you don't know what Darren the Damage Elkins is at this point, I can no longer help you. I guess that's what it comes down to. Elkins is going against Bill Algeo, because I'm not going to get my Bill Algeo Billy Quarantillo fight ever, it seems, because Algeo's on the way down, and I hope Pineda enjoys his retirement. Asu Almabayev versus Mathaus Nicolau was not a good fight, about the worst fight you can have at flyweight in general. Very inactive. It's the problem with a Nicolau fight, is that you really need somebody who will just, like, say, F it and go. At the end of the day, though, Almabayev was able to get some takedowns, and generally speaking, I think outlanded Nicolau pretty comprehensively. Let's see here. Let's check out the UFC stats here for a hot second. Almabayev outlanded him in the first and the third round. Those are the rounds I gave him. And in the second round, he got outlanded. So I gave that round to Nicolau. So there you go. I don't know if Mathaus Nicolau will stick around. There is a constant rumor from, like, multiple sources the UFC really does not like him. And I can imagine why, because his fighting style is not amazing. And when you consider that flyweight is already, like, kind of like on short notice for getting cut, that's not good. But Almabayev against the winner of Manel Kape versus Bruno Silva. And for Nicolau, like I said, possible free agency, but, like, you could put him up against Ronaldo Rodriguez, who will probably bring a fight to him, and hopefully we see something. Hopefully we see something fun from the guy on a 3-fight losing streak. Brad Katona versus Gian Matsumoto. This was great. This was super fun. I did have Katona winning rounds 1 and 3, but I have no problem with the decision going to Matsumoto. He was, early on, there were some problems. Katona was getting the early advantage because Matsumoto was really biting on feints and landing short, and it was a really problem, but he eventually got it going, landed some hard low kicks, did some good body work. There was, a lot of clinching that didn't really work either way for, like, dominance factor, but it was a really fun fight, really good action fight. This is, if I were to say, like, what fights to watch from this card, if you missed the card and are going back for some reason, this is for sure the one I would recommend. I would also recommend Elkins versus Pineda. I would also recommend Johnson versus Sumudarji. And if you got the time, Hernandez Pereira, Font versus Phillips. And then also, like, Edwards versus Vidal, which we're going to talk about, and Reed versus Jessica Penne. Anyways, had no problem with this. I think Matsumoto proved a couple of things here. He had somebody who would have problem solving and different looks for him and counters and so on. And yeah, there were some problems. Don't get me wrong. Bit on a lot of feints, landed short early. I think that there's some maturing to still be done, and, arguably lost the fight. But he went in there against Brad Katona, and he looked gained the whole time. There was never a moment where he was dissuaded by the fact that he wasn't just crushing his opponent or dealing with a one-level attack. So that was really, really good. I thought it was a fantastic work by him. Good adaptation to utilize the elbow from Brad Katona when the boxing wasn't working. I actually cut Matsumoto's eye up pretty badly with that in the second round, so that was nice. And this is a fantastic fight. Matsumoto, I've got against Hani Barcelos, and I've got Katona against the winner of Victor Hugo versus Farid Basharat. Jocelyn Edwards versus Tamiris Vidal. This was a lot of, kind of exactly what I thought about, is that you have two girls who are both used to being way more athletic than their opponents, if we're being honest. And Edwards has, like, actual technique, actual form, actual game. She missed weight at 139 pounds, but, like, at the same time, I have a great deal of sympathy for, like, these women's bantamweights who are missing weight, because a lot of them were signed with the idea that they'd be fighting at featherweight. And that includes Edwards, who was a bantamweight, even a flyweight, but, like, had talked about, like, before getting to the UFC about how it was becoming very difficult to make 135, and that she was looking forward to fighting at 145 in the UFC. And then they stopped having this. It's the same with Chelsea Chandler, I think is probably the poster girl for this, where it's like, oh, she can't make 135. No kidding. She never made 135 before the UFC. Like, she was a 145er. You signed a 145er, and now you don't have a division for her, and you're still booking her. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not gonna say, oh my, how can you cut them? No, you cut them because you don't have a division for them. But I don't know, like just trying to get them to make 135 just seems weird. It's a weird situation. But anyways, Edwards was able to overpower Vidal in the clinch, was able to outland her at range, was able to utilize good couple of good takedowns, and eventually got the rear naked choke done. It was a fantastic bout for women's featherweight, or not featherweight, bantamweight. Probably the highest level you're going to get in the mid range here for the time being. And I mean, I still think Vidal could be a good fighter. She's 26 years old. She's got the athletic upside, but like she needs coaches that'll actually turn her into like a martial artist, because she's just kind of a structuralist brawler. And it came up a lot, like where she would be throwing really inefficient, sloppy, clearly powerful, but like sloppy overhands, and Edwards would just actually utilize good striking technique and light her up. So Edwards, like I said, probably getting cut to do 145 stuff. I wouldn't book her. I just wouldn't. I don't know. Let her go down to Invicta. Maybe pay her there or something. I don't know. It's just weird. Vidal could be heading to free agency. She's 1-3 in her 4 UFC fights, but you could put her in with like Josie and Nunez or something. Jessica Penne versus Elise Reed. Jessica Penne was able to have some success early on with the pressure in the first round, but that started to, kind of break down because she's not a very good striker and not a very good wrestler. So once Reed kind of got comfortable with just denying her strikes, she was actually able to start, working calf kicks and actually slipping some strikes, landing some clean counters, putting the pressure on, and taking the second and third round by ridiculous statistical margins here. If we check on UFC stats here, here we go. 44-18 and 67-17. well, defending 8 takedowns in the second and third round. 8 takedowns between the 2 rounds, over 4 in both of them. It was just a classic. What is wrong with Penne's game is that at the end of the day, she never has had the takedown game to make her grappling work. She's a good grappler. She's a very good grappler, but she kind of relies on other people engaging in the grappling with her. And despite the fact that she has a great, frame for striking, 5'5", 67-inch reach at strawweight is not nothing. It just doesn't work out. I've got Reed against Mizuki Inoue if she's still around. She's fought twice in 4 years. I don't understand it. Anyways, and Bruna Brazil would also work if you need somebody more active. Penne, I would hope, heads into retirement because she's talked about it before and just hasn't done it. Elise Ardelane versus Melissa Martinez was a robbery on both sides because I thought Ardelane won the fight. I thought she won the first 2 rounds. She landed more and landed the better shots in rounds 1 and 2 as Martinez was skirting around the outside and, not really doing a lot, if I'm being honest. The problem with playing the leaf blower game is that you actually have to throw and land. And Martinez landing 18 strikes and 29 strikes respectively while getting hit 27 and 45 times. She was outthrown in the first and the second round. And the third round, actually. She needs to pick up her pace. That's what it comes down to. But then she kind of got robbed in the third round when she hit a liver kick that was legal and put Ardelane down, but it got called a foul. Now, to be clear, Keith Peterson did everything right after calling the foul, to be clear, because his only repercussions would have been to call the fight and go to the judges' scorecards if Ardelane couldn't continue, in which in a just world Ardelane would have won, or let the fight continue, and he did that. So I'm not going to harsh on Peterson too much. He made the wrong call, but he handled everything after the replay correctly, and the fight continued. And then Martinez wound up with a truly ridiculous 30-27 across the board scorecard that I don't understand. And I say this as somebody who picked Melissa Martinez and thinks Elise Ardelane doesn't even belong in the UFC. I stand by that. I think just this fight kind of just made me realize I don't think Melissa Martinez belongs in the UFC either at this point. She's young enough to maybe become that, but right now, no. And at the end of the day, yeah, this should have been a win for Ardelane. I guess karma comes in because it should have been a win for Martinez when she hit that liver kick. But that's all I got. I don't know. I'm not really excited to see either of these girls fight again. Like I said, I don't think they're good enough. I think they will fight just because they like the Melissa Martinez, David Martinez thing, brother and sister fighting in the UFC. So put her up against Talita Alencar maybe, and Ardelane. I don't know why they signed her, but whatever it is, I'm sure she has fights under contract and probably won't get cut. So Dana White Contender Series, and then Robelis Despain versus Austin Lane was bad. I scored round 1 and 3 for Lane. I scored round 2 for Robelis Despain, basically because it was the round where I think, if I recall correctly, I do not want to recall this fight like at all. Yeah, it was the round where Lane got one takedown for less than 1 minute of top control, and that was it. He got outstruck for the rest of it. Despain is very, very fast and very potent as a striker, but like his game is undercooked as all heck. Lane is a pretty good athlete, honestly. But he's not durable, and it was actually kind of like stunning to see him not really get hurt in this fight. This is like the first time I think I've seen him go any kind of distance with somebody who can match his speed and not just get flatlined. So progress, I guess, but I don't really count on it. Anyways, I don't care what they do with either of these guys. I didn't care coming in, and I don't care coming out. I guess what I would say is you want to put Despain in there with just like, guys, he's just going to nuke. But I mean, the problem is that is Austin Lane. Like, there's a reason I picked Robelis Despain for this fight and thought he would win. Like, I thought Lane would be that guy. Anyways, that's all I got. Have a good one. I'll be back with UFC 308 predictions, and that hopefully will be a way more exciting card to talk about than this one. Check out the description for social medias, the Discord server, which has the MMA Fight Simulator, and also my video gaming stuff if you're a nerd like me and you would like to see me delve into that kind of topic.